Hope everybody's comfy. Let's chat. Welcome to the Pillow Talk podcast, except it's just Kai in bed yapping. The vibe here is that point of a sleepover where you're just lying in bed and things get really sad or funny or political, anything extreme, that's the goal. So enjoy. I've been heavily contemplating this podcast lately, and not in the way that I'm like, should I do it? Like, I know in my heart that this is what I want to do. I'm so into this shit, and I love watching other podcasts on YouTube and hearing other people's thoughts, especially when they align. I'm definitely not worried about if this is something I want to keep doing because I think it's a beautiful way to connect with others. The podcast has been a bit slow, I'm noticing. Obviously, I have a lot to learn. I'm still growing with each episode and learning new things about what the best way to go about it is. And so I know that it's because of that as well. But obviously, it puts a person down a bit and it makes you contemplate things and it makes you wonder, like, am I even doing the right thing? Is this like even worth it or whatever? I think something that I always have wondered about people starting podcasts is like, why do you think it's so important to put your thoughts out there on the internet? Why do you think your opinions are that amazing that other people need to be listening to you? That started to come about with me. It's like, do I really think my opinions matter that much that I need other people to listen to me? But I hope no one ever thinks that that's what I think. I hope none of you think that I'm doing this because I think my opinions are the best opinions and that everybody needs to be aligning with my opinions. I never want that to be the message that comes across. I always want to be discussing things. Something that really motivated me with this podcast to start it is that a lot of the time I don't really get the opportunity to bring up certain concepts to larger crowds of people. And some of them I really do think is important to talk about. And that's why I like talking about these things on social media. And it's not for me to be pushing an opinion on you, but it's more for me to bring something up and then start a conversation. Although I know it's difficult when it's just a video that's being posted to you for you to listen to. And that's kind of why I've actually also been considering making this podcast live and I don't know, maybe streaming the podcast so that we can actually have a conversation while it's happening. Because I understand that it's difficult for a listener to feel like they have a place to say something when I'm just like putting a video out there for you to listen to. But I really do want to hear back from all of you, good or bad, or it doesn't even have to be good or bad. It could just be your opinion or whatever. Yeah, so I am starting to think about making it live, but it does make me a little bit nervous to think about that. But yeah, I think it would emphasize that I'm trying to make this a conversation and not just me pushing opinions on you guys. Now that I'm mentioning it, the reason I'm saying like I really don't believe that my opinions are the correct opinion and that I'm trying to push them onto you guys or whatever, because part of like me wanting to be a better person and whatever is in hopes that I'm wrong. I hope that my opinions and stuff I will one day not agree with. And maybe, I'm not saying that maybe I'll one day be totally against everything I'm saying, but, you know, I hope to grow and I hope to not always have this exact same mindset that I've got in this very moment. And in order for me to be able to grow is to accept that my opinions are not the total right opinion. Like, it could be more correct than others, but it's definitely not the most correct. And actually, in a lot of the topics that I mention in these episodes, I know I haven't gone that in depth, but I have a lot of ideas. So, in things that I have mentioned and in things that I want to mention, I actually think that I'm very, or not very, but quite uneducated or like just unaware of some things. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but I want to be more culturally informed and historically informed and geographically and scientifically informed. And I don't think that what I know is everything that needs to be known and I know everything and my opinions are correct. Like I'm kind of here saying what I know, but fill in the gaps, please. Like I know that there's gaps. I know there's got to be big gaps that I miss because obviously I don't know everything. And this is like part of my journey. I'm doing this in hopes of filling in some gaps for you guys, but I need to also have gaps filled in. The whole thing about this is for it to be this two-way thing of us helping each other grow. So maybe I'll say something that you never thought of before, but then maybe you have something to contribute to that and you can say that in the comments. That's really my whole approach with this. And I think that a lot of people forget that being right isn't actually good, because then you're just stuck in the state that you're in. You're not allowing yourself to grow if you can't accept that you might be a bit wrong in something, or, if you're not teachable, you're not going to be able to grow. You need to accept that there are certain things out there that you're not aware of and that you haven't been exposed to, and it's good to learn things from other people, and it's good to have an open mind. Even when people say things that you're against, you can still be totally against some things people say, in my opinion. But I don't think it's right to ever be like, you're wrong, I'm right. I think you can acknowledge that maybe you're less wrong than someone else, but you could still be wrong in some aspects, you know what I mean? So acknowledging that there's always something to learn is important. And when someone says something that you might think is wrong or is arrogant, ignorant, you also got to acknowledge that they're saying things from what they know. They're doing their best as well from their circumstances. And the best you can do is either just enlighten them with respect or just allow them to think what they think. Some people don't have an open mind and they won't accept any knowledge from anyone else. And that's also understandable. For some people, it's hard to understand that other people's point of views could be right as well. I think something that a lot of people forget is that all of our beliefs and thoughts and the things that we feel to be true, it's exactly that. It's a belief. You can't say something that you believe is right and say that it is the full and utmost truth when it's purely a belief. It's not something that you can prove to be true. And everybody has different experiences and stuff that make them think the exact same thing about their beliefs. And I know when I say belief, people will revert to like religious beliefs, but I'm talking about like anything you believe to be true. This could be politically, this could be socially. It has so many aspects. So obviously religion could be a part of that. I think it's important to acknowledge that as long as it's a belief, it's not a fact. I try to keep that mindset. Obviously it is difficult. I'm only human. And sometimes I do get caught up in my egoic ways, and I will get passionate about something that I believe to be true. I guess that's why I'm trying to reinforce this now, because I don't want that to be the way that I go about my life, and I don't want it to be the way that this podcast is portrayed. Like, I'm not just trying to say that everybody needs to be listening to me. It's more like, this is where I'm at. What do you guys have to say about that? I guess at this point in my life, I've just really been craving community. I've started learning that if you want a community, you have to also be a good villager. And so this is me trying to put myself out there. And I know that there's also little ways to do this in my life to build a community physically, but I actually love the idea of an online community that resonates with you, that I can say things and get more feedback from you guys that maybe builds my knowledge on certain things. Like, that's exactly what I'm craving, because I know that there's people out there that resonate with me. And I've seen that because I've been a part of online communities where maybe I'm not the center of it. I hate saying that. Like, when I say I want to start a community, it's not that this is the community and I'm going to be the center of it. It's more like I'm going to be a part of this circle of people, and it's just my turn to speak right now. But I think everyone should get a chance to speak. And that is why I guess maybe a live stream would be better for this. But I don't know, guys. A live stream really scares me, because something about me when I'm speaking, I do sometimes stumble on my words, and sometimes I'm not really sure how to go about explaining something. And sometimes I just need a gap to think about how I'm trying to explain what I'm thinking. So that's the one thing that recording gives me a little bit of space with. I can give myself some leeway, because even if I do need a little break to think, I know that I can just cut that out. I think the reason I also crave community is because none of us were meant to be living this life alone and without any support. And I know that this is now sounding like I'm talking about physical community, like around me. But the thing is, I do have that. It may not be like strong, because I also don't really put a lot into it as much as I could. But I think that online community, especially because the online realm is such a big part of our lives today. So, online community, I think, is important now because the online world is such a big part of our reality. And this capitalistic society can really have you thinking that you need to be able to do everything on your own, everything. That you need to be able to get on the top and then push yourself there. For me, that's not my goal. And I know that people out there, it's their goal and go them. For a while, I thought that that's what I had to be striving for as well. But to be honest, lately, all I want is to be a part of something. You know, I could be small and not necessarily getting to the top, but if I'm a part of something, to me that I'm a part of is so big. And I want that. I want to be a part of something bigger than me. Like, I don't think I need to be this big person. I want to be a part of something big. I think the reason that I want the social community, maybe even a little bit more than the physical community, is because social, I mean online. The thing about online community is that I can reach people from like all over the world, potentially. It's a lot easier to access people that resonate with you when you're not just looking in your physical vicinity. So if I'm looking for people that resonate with me and that I can connect with, increasing the geographical range, I think makes that a lot easier. Online platforms help with that, But community is important, and I don't think it's something that I crave alone. I think people crave it, but maybe don't want to admit it, or maybe don't even realize it because of capitalism and the way everyone gets pushed to do things on their own. Maybe a lot of people just even ignore the idea of building a community because it's like, I don't need anybody else, that whole self-sufficient mindset. And I think it is good to be able to be independent. And when I say that, I mean more like almost emotionally. If you're relying on other people for your happiness, that's bad because the only thing that's actually constant in your life is you. So you need to be able to give yourself happiness. You need to be able to regulate your own mental health and emotions and stuff like that and provide happiness for yourself. If you break down or if you allow external things to cause an emotional reaction in you, that's not very sustainable, I guess, because the external world is so out of your control, so out of your control. And that includes the people in your life. So if you are depending on other people for your happiness, that is just like a recipe for disaster, because you can't control what they're going to do. It doesn't even have to mean that people can do things intentionally to hurt you. People could literally pass away or just have to leave. It's so important to be able to not rely on others for that kind of thing. I also think in terms of reaching your goals, because if you're going to everybody else for advice on how to do things, everyone is going to think logically. And sometimes that's not the best way. Yes, sometimes the logical aspect is good to hear. But I don't know. I've always noticed that in my goals in life, my dreams, every single time I have something big coming up that I'm planning and that I want to do, I usually know exactly how to go about it and what I want to happen, just not how sometimes. And then usually, just before it's about to happen, the people in my life will be like, no, you need to come up with a different option. You need to maybe like do this, and it's not what I want to do. So I hear them and I hear their logical side. So maybe I'll like look into backups, which is I think a good thing, it's good to hear that. But I haven't given up yet. And I'm not going to deny anything from that opportunity. Does that make sense? And then usually it works out. Usually it still works out. That backup was good for me to have, but usually what I actually wanted still works out. In that way, I think it is also good to not depend on other people's approval and mindset and opinions on your goals. Because honestly, at the end of the day, if you let that stop you from achieving your goals, that's on you. Because yes, as much as those people told you not to do it, you accepted that and you went with it. In more social aspects, community is very important. And I think it is okay to rely on others because there's a point where you being alone all the time, you can provide your own happiness. But we all need that kind of social connectivity and, being able to rely on someone and know that someone has your back and just connect with other people. That is part of mental health as well. And it's a part of being human. we crave that. So I think in a way it is still okay to rely on other people for that, because I mean, that's not really something you can rely on yourself for. You know what I mean? A social connection, you literally need other beings. Everything is a balance. And I think I've said this in almost every video. Like, you just have to be able to balance it, and you have to be able to know when you're relying too much on others, when you're relying too much on yourself solely. That's exactly what I mean. You can't just rely on yourself. Community is still important. There's a balance. Animals and plants rely on community. They rely on the other beings around them. I was watching a YouTube video the other day. It was like a documentary style video on how plants rely on community. I can't remember what the name of the video was. I'll try link it below. The video itself is a little bit slow, but the content is interesting. They were explaining about how trees, like in a forest with like diverse other trees and stuff, they grow so much better and they thrive so much better than when the trees around them get chopped down. All of a sudden, that tree is now dying. They rely on each other. Like, to a certain point, you need to be able to sustain yourself. But when you take away community, that's also not good. There was like a whole scientific background to it. Like, it had to do with the way that the trees literally transfer nutrients to one another and help each other to fight off like pathogens. It's very interesting. I do recommend watching that, because sometimes this is going to sound maybe a little bit weird, but I think there's something to learn from animals and plants. Because we sometimes get so caught up in our egos and everything. And yes, plants and animals, they are mostly just trying to survive, which is also not the goal. We're also here to live this life. And that's the one beautiful thing about being human and having this consciousness and awareness. And it is so beautiful. But I do sometimes think that looking at plants and animals can actually teach us a lot about ourselves, because we are animals. You know, we are just another form of life like they are. And I think there's just different levels of consciousness. Like, in my opinion, trees are like more life than consciousness, and then we are more consciousness than life. As much as we are life, we have way more consciousness, and experience is our form of living this life. I don't know. Anyway, like for trees and stuff, it's literally just purely existing, even though they contribute so much more by purely existing. That's like a whole nother topic. Just like, the point of life is just to exist, because you don't realize how much you're actually contributing by just existing. But anyway, I think it's really interesting the way that plants sometimes reflect us, and the way they show that they are living, and that as much as being self-sufficient is good, depending on others is still important. You know, having good people around you is important. If you have something toxic around you, you're likely going to end up being toxic. Or not toxic, but maybe toxified. I don't know what the word is. Like, you'll be a little bit ruined from it. The good thing that I can take from that is, like, plants can't choose who's around them. Obviously, they can compete if something isn't nice and they want to like compete and try kill that thing. But it's a little bit more difficult. Like, for us, we can definitely choose the people around us. We can choose who our community is. I really hope this podcast helps in me selecting the few that do resonate with me, you know. And really, I've noticed so many of you that have been sticking with me in this and that have been supporting me, and I'm so ever grateful for you guys. Like, wow. I have a lot more things cooking for this podcast, and just more ways for me to be gaining a bit from it. But for now, I'd love if you guys could just share your opinions and help me feel like I am growing a community. Is that too much to ask? I just want to be friends. But really, thanks so much for your support, and thank you for listening. Share your thoughts. If I couldn't say that enough. Thank you so much for listening to today's Pillow Talk episode. If you have any thoughts, please comment them down below. I want this to be a conversation, like a sleepover. I love you so much. Bye.